Boringly segmented, brilliantly varied, or bewilderingly linear, all three could be used to describe Halo 4's fourth mission, Infinity. Infinity opens with Master Chief hot on the trail of the recently released Didact, who has made a beeline for the grounded UNSC Infinity.
This is Lasky to UNSC Infinity. We're up to our next bad guys down here. Does anyone read?
This is Sierra 117 of the UNSC Forward Under Dawn. We're on station, ready to assist.
Negative copy. Sounded like you said Forward Under Dawn. Come again.
Signal's bouncing in and out. I can't clean it up.
Light up their friend or foe tags. We're gonna need something to zero in on.
Lasky and crew have boots on Requiem itself, so Chief and Cortana head off to help them. There are many beautiful environments for you to feast your eyes on during 4's campaign, and the jungle you explore here to kick things off is, for my money, one of the most gorgeous of them all. Halo 3 begins with similar during Sierra 117 as you trek through lush Tanzanian surroundings, but Infinity is a step up in many regards. The fog, the particle effects, the mix of light and dark, it's an incredibly well realised, very atmospheric setting. Infinity's first half I find interesting when it comes to level design, as it shines a light on how 343 Industries often includes the right components, but in the wrong order. Sierra 117's jungle has narrow sections, but those narrow sections are accompanied by larger segments to keep gameplay interesting. You move between them at regular intervals, as you do in nearly every Bungie-developed effort, and it's a huge part of what gives the series its familiar flow. Infinity actually has both too, although they're generally still more linear, but they're not blended together, which accounts for much of the difference in how enjoyable they are to play. You traverse the more cramped areas first, and we'll focus on those to begin with. While there's not a ton of room to manoeuvre, there's a decent amount of verticality to take advantage of, and it's great that the crawlers you meet also use it to try and gain the upper hand, creeping up and down the various flora in your vicinity to make life difficult. It's a shame, however, that they so regularly choose to drop down from their perch and face you head on, rather than opting to fully utilise the edge afforded to them. Beyond that, these early encounters are very much the Halo with a dash of Call of Duty affair 343 Industries so frequently offers up, until you reach this brave Marine blowing up a knight on his way out and the Promethean Vision armor ability lying nearby. If you're a fan of classic action movie series Predator, as I am, this particular twist will be right up your alley. However, instead of you being a super soldier hunted by an unstoppable alien in an unfamiliar jungle setting as you are in the film, you are a super soldier going on the offensive. I've never been a fan of equipment or armor abilities and the like in Halo, 3's one-off consumables being my favourite of the bunch, but I dislike them far less when they're tied to a specific gameplay twist. Platforming with the bullfrogs using a jetpack in Halo Reach's Exodus is a great example of that in action, and here there's another. My only wish is that the fog had perhaps obscured your long-range vision even more than it already does, as it's still fairly easy to spot the Prometheans while your new pickup is on cooldown. Doing so would make timing your attacks and hiding when the ability is recharging a more pressing concern, adding an extra layer of strategy to proceedings. During your travels, you'll also pick up Identification Friend or Foe tags, or IFF tags for short, from fallen comrades. After finding enough of them, Master Chief finally locates Lasky as well as Sarah Palmer, the first Spartan to appear in the series besides Chief himself, as part of a surprisingly muted welcome.
Sir, we'll never get the wounded back to the ship on foot.
I don't know if it's too soon to ask you for a favor, but we're gonna run out of breathing room here real quick. I don't suppose you're any good at clearing LZs.
On occasion. I'll send out an all clear once the area's secured.
It's at this point, joined by a squad of Marines, that arenas begin to get bigger, and the difference in how Bungie and 343 set up their jungle experiences really becomes apparent. As mentioned previously, Bungie tends to mix the large with the small, so you move from open to open to narrow, and so on and so forth. That's not always the case, of course, but it's the rule they tend to follow. 343 prefers to expand gradually over time. Areas start out small, then get bigger, then get even bigger, with that where you push up a hill and then hold off Promethean Prometheans while Cortana unlocks a nearby door, being the most substantial of them all. The thing is, there's absolutely nothing wrong with 343's approach, and if it were featured in an FPS outside of the series, I'd likely even be praising it. Intensity increases very sensibly, with you facing larger and larger groups of enemies over time while more and more weapons are gradually introduced, and as you progress, scenarios increase in complexity, for example with the Promethean vision section earlier or this wave-based defense set piece. You'll also soon jump in a Scorpion and later a Mantis 2 to cap things off with an action-packed double crescendo. It's well designed and thoughtfully structured, but it's not structured how Halo's should be, and that is, in my view, the crux of the issue. I genuinely believe that if the game had been given a makeover and was released as the first entry in an entirely new franchise, it would have been far more popular than it's ended up being, as it is by no means a bad game when its design is viewed in isolation. Also, I do love this hilltop holdout. You've plenty of choices for how to arm yourself while Marines also provide backup, and it never threatens to outstay its welcome. There's always the potential for something like it to go on and on and on, and in so many games that is precisely what happens, but this one only lasts a minute or two, which is the perfect amount. Kudos to 343 for showing restraint and not making us sit here for an age doing the same thing ad nauseum. Once the door is unlocked, Cortana apologises for a moment of rudeness as rampancy continues to affect her.
I'm sorry about back there. That hatch of security was more difficult than I expected.
It's all right.
It's not alright. Nothing about it is alright.
There is one lone on-foot battle with the Covenant and a few Prometheans during Infinity, as it's revealed that the two factions are working together. I wish this had happened sometime later. Multi-faction engagements are a huge part of Halo, and there is a single solitary level in 4 which includes them, Forerunner, the mission prior to this one. I've nothing against the team-up in principle, but there are few, if any, occasions in the entire campaign where it actually changes the mechanics of combat. You fight groups of Covenant and you fight groups of Prometheans, but almost never shall the twain meet, even if they're both present at the same time within larger arenas. This part is an early indicator of the issue. You kill all the Covenant present and the reinforcements ferried in after, and only once they've all been dispatched do the Prometheans appear. Like the problem with wider and enclosed environments discussed earlier, it's again a question of segmentation. The requisite parts needed to create something captivating are all there, but they're usually always kept separate rather than them being combined in any meaningful way. With your rocky surroundings cleared of organic and machine foes, it's time to hot-foot it to the Infinity itself.
Chief, I'm redirecting the Spartan Force to Rally Point Alpha Sierra Foxtrot. Until we catch up, you have tactical command of the forward assault force. Rendezvous with those men and take back that ship.
Yes, sir.
Good luck, Chief. Lasky out.
There's a very jarring transition here as the screen fades to black before you appear on the ground in a completely different place for the Scorpion portion of the mission. 343's fencing off of vehicle sections is prevalent throughout the campaign, and it's the third of Infinity's unholy trinity of segmentation. Now granted, there's not always a fade to black per se, but nigh on every time a vehicle is available, it is part of a very specific, very isolated proposition. With Bungie, there's mostly a but involved when they present their vehicle offerings. A Scorpion is the best way to get through this part of Assault on the Control Room, but you don't have to use it. A Mongoose is useful during these early stages of the arc, but there's plenty of other vehicles nearby if you fancy something different. With 343, the statement tends to be more definitive. This is the Ghost Escape sequence. This is the Scorpion run. This is the part where you fly a broadsword. That Bungie But, if you'll pardon the somewhat bizarre expression, is a pivotal part of the series, and it's largely absent in 4. Vehicles exist not to create additional compelling options, but rather as their own one-off slice of gameplay, which is at odds with how they should be handled. Remnants, or perhaps even a remnant of it, still exist, with Reclaimer's final skirmish giving us a tantalising glimpse of what could have been throughout the rest of the campaign if 343 had focused on large-scale engagements featuring plenty of choice, but unfortunately it's something of an abnormality. The Scorpion run itself is entertaining if limited. It's atmospheric, there's plenty of things to explode, and it remains action-packed for its duration, and I'm partial to the changes made to the vehicle itself. Previous renditions of the tank have always fired in a relatively straight line, whereas Halo 4's has an arc to it, hence the height guides on the crosshair. I find it makes hitting long-range shots very satisfying, as it requires a smidgen extra brain power, although it's definitely a little less enjoyable across especially expansive areas where it's easier to miss shots. sections, such as that just mentioned at the end of Reclaimer. All in all, Infinity's Scorpion run doesn't give you the most bang for your buck, but there's nothing wrong with it either. One problem I do have is it being used as the gameplay introduction to the Spartan 4's. While they are no Master Chief, every Spartan 4 is a force to be reckoned with, equipped with the latest and greatest, and in this game quite ugly, Mjolnir Gen 2 armour, as well as many physical augmentations designed to make them stronger soldiers. Imagine them storming onto the battlefield towards the end of a particularly tough set piece to lend Master Chief some much needed support, or making a grand entrance via a series of heroic deeds during one of Halo 4's impressive cinematics. Either would have been great. What you get instead is them sitting on the side of your tank shooting Covenant, or riding round haphazardly in a Warthog like you've seen Marines do 1,000 times before. It's quite the missed opportunity when you consider their arrival should have been a momentous occasion for the series. Once everything in your path is naught but bodies and burning wreckage, including a pair of hunters you should be able to take down with ease, you're contacted by the Infinity's captain, Andrew Del Rio.
That satellite took down the ship's defenses and is extracting data from the ship's mainframes as we speak.
Can we break the connection?
Main point of contact's on the ship's upper hull. The fastest route is through the maintenance causeway. There's a Mantis docked inside the door. Take it. You'll need the extra firepower.
Piloting the Mantis is a lot of fun, as while it has similar destructive capabilities to the Scorpion, it does offer something different. The best strategy with the Scorpion is often to stand your ground and blow things up from a distance as you cautiously trundle forward. The Mantis, by comparison, is equally deadly, but requires you be more of a brawler. You have to get in close, but you're given extra utility compared to the tank to help level the playing field. Both are intolerably slow, but you're usually so busy causing carnage that it never becomes too noticeable. I do have misgivings about this section though. Coming after the Scorpion run, another narrow blast 'em up in a slow-moving vehicle is a further unnecessary slowing of the pace, even if laying waste to Covenant and Prometheans alike is very gratifying. It is essentially exactly what you've just been doing, again. That being said, I see why it needs to exist. In an ideal world, Infinity would transition from the Scorpion run to the final part of the Mantis sequence, with you fending off attackers and destroying jammers to bring the Infinity's defences back online. It would keep things varied rather than them bordering on being repetitive. However, given this is the first time you ever pilot a Mantis, getting to grips with its controls and dealing with everything unfolding around you during the finale would be extremely overwhelming. The early stages in an enclosed space being there is important, as it gives you time to acclimatise to exactly how the vehicle functions before things begin to get out of hand. Duking it out on the ship's hull is a great way to cap things off. The skybox is incredible, with the Didact looming large overhead and later the broadswords and Mac cannon helping turn the tide, and the pace of combat attached to that spectacle matches the chaotic backdrop, romping across the medium-sized area as you please, destroying everything which dares block your path is a nice crescendo to conclude on. On the topic of endings, Infinity draws to a close with Master Chief and Captain Del Rio meeting face to face and butting heads over how to proceed, a worrying sign of things to come.
This is a first contact scenario, Master Chief. Priority is to free Infinity from Requiem's gravity well and file a threat assessment back at FleetCom.
You mean we're leaving?
Sir, Infinity drove the Didact back. He's vulnerable.
He isn't the only one.
In almost any other first-person shooter, I think Infinity would be highly regarded. It's well structured, fairly tightly paced, and features a ton of variety, all of which is set against some absolutely stunning settings. But it's not part of any other first-person shooter, it's part of the Halo series, and this is where the issue with segmentation begins to rear its ugly head. Larger and smaller combat arenas, enemy factions, and on-foot and vehicle sections are all kept separate from one another, which gives the impression that although 343 Industries clearly had the talent to create all the parts a great Halo title needs, they struggled when it came time to connect them all together. Infinity has plenty of entertaining bits and bobs, Promethean vision in the jungle, the hilltop holdout and the Scorpion run to name but a few, but because they're all so disparate, they never combine as well as they perhaps should have done. If 343 had managed that, we might have got one of the best Halo levels regardless of developer. As it stands, Infinity is an enjoyable experience which is unfortunately divided into a few too many pieces. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you had a Scorpion-tabulous time, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing your thoughts, and all's well, we'll hang out again soon.